You found yourself. But why do you still feel invisible? You rebuilt your soul, healed old traumas, did the work that no one sees. You have dived where few have the courage to go. He tore apart his own illusions, faced abandonment, survived rejection, and now, even in its most authentic version, you are still ignored. It seems the world remains blind, that the people who should see you most are the ones who turn their faces away. And the more you wake up, the more alone you feel. There is a silent pain in being invisible after you have found yourself. It's like you've come home, but no one was there to welcome you. Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But perhaps your light is shining in hearts that have never learned to look within. Maybe you're trying to be seen by eyes that only recognize masks. And this is the pain that almost no one talks about. The pain of having evolved and still not being recognized. The pain of having awakened and still being treated as if I were still lost. The pain of having healed, but still being defined by old versions that no longer serve you. Do you feel it? Do you feel like you've changed inside, but still feel like no one noticed? You walk lighter, but people still look at you like you're the one crying in the dark. You love more consciously, but we still give to those who don't know how to receive. You are whole, but the world seems to only see its broken pieces. It's cruel, but it's real. And maybe what no one told you is that when you truly find yourself, you automatically start to disappear from places where you were only accepted fragmented. You become invisible to the environments that fed on your pain. You stop being noticed by those who only knew how to deal with your neediness. You start to bother simply because you no longer need it. This is the paradox of awakening. You shine, and because of that you are ignored. You evolve, and because of that, you are rejected. You see yourself, and that's why many people stop seeing you. But what if invisibility isn't a curse? What if it is part of the sacred process of your reconstruction? No, you are not broken. You are in transition. You are not being forgotten. You are being relocated. And before I continue, I want you to comment below. Now, I found myself, and even if no one sees me, I remain. Write this down. Let your soul declare what the world does not yet recognize. Because this video, it's for those who feel. It is for those who have rebuilt themselves in silence. It's for those who learned to see themselves, even when no one else knew how. And now that you've come this far, perhaps you are ready to understand the real reason, the spiritual one, for this pain that is as invisible as it is profound. Because what you feel has a name. And the name of this is the pain of not being recognized in your essence. It is the silent cry of the soul that has gone through an entire journey of healing, but she still waits to be validated by eyes that never knew how to see. You don't want applause, doesn't want a stage. You just want to be perceived in truth, to be felt beyond appearance, being seen beyond the label, to be read like a sacred book, not a disposable cover. And that emotional hunger that consumes you inside, this desire to say, hey, I've changed. Why doesn't anyone see this? It's the last illusion that still holds you back. It's the last link between your old self and the new version you're trying to protect. But there is one truth that needs to be spoken firmly. Those who don't see you now never really saw you. They saw projections. They saw the lack. They saw the character you used to be accepted. Now that you are real, they walk away. Because they don't know how to deal with someone who no longer needs to beg for affection. And it hurts. It hurts because you still have remnants of that child who dreamed of a hug that never came. It hurts because you learned to give yourself away, hoping someone would finally choose you. It hurts because your soul was taught to believe that it is only valuable if it is validated. But here is the key that can set you free. You have already been chosen. By you. By life. By the light that still dwells within your silence. And if this touched any part of you, comment now. I no longer need to be seen by those who have never seen me. Tell yourself this. Write as an act of liberation. And if this video is making sense to your soul, leave your like. It's not just a click. It's a symbol that you've been touched. Subscribe to the channel. Here you won't find empty formulas. You'll find truth, depth, and healing. Now breathe. Because what comes next? I'll show you why this pain you feel today is a sign that you are already in spiritual transition. You did everything they promised would bring peace. He reconnected with his soul, crossed internal deserts, touched old wounds that had never been named. You silenced the outside world to finally hear your own breathing. You unlearned what you were taught about worthiness, about love, about belonging. You dismantled the character they created for you and with trembling hands rebuilt a version of yourself that was true, not perfect, but honest. You broke patterns. You released the bonds that were suffocating you. It closed cycles that made you sick. You looked inside when everyone told you to move on. And even after all this, you still feel like no one sees you. It's as if the world has gone silent around you. As if the moment you decided to be true to who you are, people lost interest. You stopped pleasing and then they started ignoring you. You stopped making excuses and then they started pushing you away. You stopped asking for love and then they started acting like you didn't exist. This is the silent scream of the soul. That feeling of having done everything right and still living as if you were invisible. You're not asking for much. You just want to be felt, want to be seen without having to shout. You want to be welcomed without having to diminish yourself. But what no one told you is that when you heal, you begin to vibrate at a different frequency, and not everyone will be able to reach you. Some won't even be able to notice you. It's as if its light begins to disturb those who still live in the shadow of their own denial. And you ask yourself with a lump in your throat, why now that I've found myself do I feel so alone? Why now that I'm whole does it seem like everyone has turned away? Why the more I evolve, the more I become invisible? The answer, although difficult, is simple. You are not invisible. You're just too visible to a world accustomed to seeing only the superficial. Its depth is frightening. Its authenticity confronts. Your peace irritates those who still live in internal war. The truth is, you've become someone who no longer needs to put yourself out there to be validated. And that's precisely why so many have stopped noticing you. They only knew how to deal with their fragile, dependent, malleable version. Now that you've stopped explaining yourself, they don't know where to fit you in anymore. Now that you've said no, they'd rather walk away than learn to respect you. Now that you've stopped accepting crumbs, they call you difficult. You have evolved. But they keep looking at you with the eyes of the past. They see your strength, but remember your pain. They see your maturity, but they still treat you like someone who begged for love. And it hurts, because you know how far you've come. You know the price you paid to become who you are today. You know the nights you cried in silence just to be able to smile in peace the next day. And when no one recognizes this, it feels like nothing made sense. But he did. You just need to understand that your pain today is no longer that of someone who is lost. It is the pain of those who are moving to a new level of consciousness. There is a moment in spiritual awakening when the world seems to stop listening to you. The conversations become too shallow, the environments too heavy, the connections are too fragile. You try to fit in again, but you don't fit in anymore. It's like going back to the house where you grew up and realizing everything has shrunk. It's not the house that has changed. It's you who grew up. And that's why she no longer shelters you. You are not ungrateful. It's just ready for another home. An inner home. A home where you don't have to pretend to be loved. The pain you feel today is not a punishment. It's a sign. It shows that you have crossed the line between survival and truth. That you are no longer living to please, but to be whole. That you are no longer looking to fit in, but to truly belong. And this unfortunately distances you from many people. But pay attention. This also brings you closer to the right people. The ones who see you without needing you to explain yourself. Those who feel your soul before even hearing your voice. Of those who recognize their silence as sacred, not as absence. The ones who don't want to change you, just welcome you. Such people exist, but they are not just anywhere, and they don't arrive until you're ready to stand in your truth. So hang in there. Don't undo your healing just to fit in 6 spaces. Don't abandon your new consciousness just because it left you alone for a while. The solitude of the awakened soul is sacred. It's where you hear what really matters. It is there that your truth takes root. It is there that the eyes that matter finally recognize you. And if any part of this spoke to your soul, comment here. I won't hide again just to be seen. Leave this phrase as a mark of your truth, as proof that even in silence you are increasingly whole. You believed with all sincerity that by healing yourself, things would change, that when you finally reconnect with your soul, the people around you would welcome you with open arms, that by stopping being who you were taught to be, You would be valued for who you really are. You believed that by healing your wounds, the world would see your light, that your inner strength, built with so much pain and silence, would be recognized. But what he found was the opposite. What he found was the even deeper silence of indifference, the cold distance of those who didn't understand, or didn't want to understand, his transformation. And maybe that broke you a little more, because deep down, there was hope. The hope that being true would be enough. The hope that rebuilding would attract respect. The hope that the healed pain would automatically transform into received love. But no one told you that spiritual awakening is not a spectacle, that healing is not a stage, that there is no applause on the path of truth. In fact, healing is invisible to those who still live in denial. Its depth is illegible to those who only see the surface. Its transformation is too silent to be noticed by those who only recognize the noise of chaos. Rumi said, "Don't look outside for what can only be cured inside." And yet almost all of us fall for this illusion. We believe that by healing ourselves we will finally receive what was denied us. We believe that by becoming emotionally whole, we will be more easily accepted. But the truth is bitter. Internal healing does not guarantee external acceptance. Your peace does not guarantee belonging in places where emotional warfare is still the primary language. You are not recognized because you are cured. You are ignored because they are not yet. You are no less valuable now. In fact, you have never been so whole. But the problem is that its brightness is now frightening. Your silence is disturbing. Your emotional independence is read as coldness. Your authenticity is confused with arrogance. Your self-love is seen as disdain. Because there is a whole world accustomed to loving the wounded, used to connecting through pain, accustomed to maintaining bonds based on lack, guilt, necessity. And when you appear, whole awake with your pain welcomed, you break this logic. You dismantle the bonds that only existed while you accepted being less. You break the silent contracts that required you to pretend, and this generates rejection, because many are not ready to live with someone who no longer needs to be fixed. They don't know how to love someone who doesn't depend on them. They don't know how to deal with someone who says no, firmly and lovingly at the same time. They don't know how to recognize someone who is no longer trying to be chosen. You are not the problem, but it's the mirror. You show them what they still can't bear to see in themselves. You reflect the path they are not yet willing to take, and that's painful, because our deepest instinct is not just to heal ourselves. It is being seen in our healing. It is being loved for who we have become. It is being embraced, not by the old pain, but by the new consciousness. But this validation doesn't always come, and when it comes, it's not who we expected. And when it doesn't come, it hurts as if the healing was in vain, as if it weren't enough to have crossed the desert. We still need to prove that it existed. But listen to this. Your truth doesn't need an audience. Your healing does not need approval. She needs honesty with yourself. It needs to be supported, even when no one notices. It needs to be lived in silence, even when the world only values what makes noise. You don't need people to understand your journey, because they weren't with you in the early mornings when you cried in silence. They didn't see the days when getting out of bed was a struggle. They don't know how much you had to die inside to be reborn whole. They didn't follow the process, and yet they want to judge the result. So don't get lost trying to explain your transformation to those who only feed on old versions. You don't owe anyone anything. You owe loyalty only to your soul, and your soul knows. She witnessed every fall. She heard every prayer whispered through tears. She was the only one who saw you when no one else did, and that's why she's the only one who can truly validate you. The mistake was not to heal. The mistake, if there is one, was thinking that the cure would change others. But the cure was never about them. It was always about you to stop begging for love, about you stopping asking permission to exist, about you finally choosing to be whole, even if it costs you the company of many. You are not invisible. You are protected. You are not being ignored. You are being spared. Spared from returning to places where your soul no longer breathes. Spared from repeating patterns that your consciousness has already broken. Spared from selling yourself cheap to be accepted by those who never had eyes for your value. And if it hurts you, it's not weakness. It's proof that you're human. It's a sign that you still care. But now perhaps it's time to redirect that care, to turn attention inward, to reaffirm to yourself as many times as necessary, I don't need to be seen by eyes that still refuse to open. You are not here by chance. If you've made it this far, something inside you knows. Your journey is not to be applauded. It is to be lived, with courage, with silence, with presence. And if something in this video spoke to your soul, write in the comments, "I support myself, even when no one understands." This sentence is the beginning of your new truth, and maybe the world will start to see you exactly when you stop needing to be seen. You may have become an adult, read self-knowledge books, undergone therapy, listened to mantras, recited affirmations, sought spirituality, aligned chakras, burned letters, released bonds, performed all the rituals the modern world recommends. But if a part of you, a very ancient part, has not yet been looked at with compassion, it will continue to demand a stage. It will continue to knock on the door of your consciousness with the small, wounded fists of the child you once were. Because the truth is that child still exists inside you. The one who cried alone in the dark. The one who wasn't held when she needed it most. The one who got used to holding back her tears so as not to disturb. Who learned to smile to be accepted. Who silenced her own desires to be loved. She's still there. And she doesn't want much. She doesn't want the world. She doesn't want fame. She doesn't want everyone's eyes on her. She wants something simple and devastating at the same time. To be recognized. To be validated. To be looked at with affection, without judgment. To be seen as someone who always did her best with the emotional resources she had, but no one gave it to her. And so now, even though you've grown, evolved, awakened, part of you still searches for that same look. A look that says, "I see you." And it's that look, or rather the absence of it, that continues to silently wound you. The pain of invisibility in adulthood rarely arises in adulthood. It's not the fault of the boss who ignores you, the partner who doesn't notice your efforts, the friends who don't notice your efforts to be present. These are just triggers, just echoes, just repetitions. The true trigger for this pain has much deeper roots. It has roots in childhood. The times you tried to show a drawing and no one looked. The days you kept quiet so the adults wouldn't fight. The nights you cried into your pillow hoping someone would hear, and no one did. And no matter how much you try to rationalize all of this today, no matter how much you tell yourself that you've overcome it, that you understand, that this is a thing of the past, your body remembers, your soul remembers, your inner child remembers, because it's not just memories, it's an unwelcome emotional memory. It's a hole in your heart that you tried to fill with achievements, with performance, with external acceptance, and yet it still hurts. Human beings aren't driven solely by the desire to live. They're driven by the desire to be seen while they're alive, to be seen with soul, to be perceived in their depth, to be validated without needing to explain themselves, to be welcomed even when they're broken. But those who have never been seen when they need it most grow up with the unconscious belief that they need to deserve attention, that they need to prove their worth, that they need to be perfect to be loved. And that's why, even after healing, you still feel like you need to do more. Even after so much self-discovery, you still seek someone's gaze. You still strive to be noticed. You still feel hurt when you're forgotten. You still feel like a failure when you're not applauded. Because inside you, this wounded child still believes that love must be earned, that only the strong are chosen, that only the silent are tolerated, that only the beautiful are remembered, that only the right ones are loved. But that's not true. That was the distortion you were taught. That was the narrative you had to construct to continue existing in an emotionally impoverished environment. That was the strategy that kept you alive, but now prevents you from living authentically. Because those who live trying to be accepted don't allow themselves to be whole, and those who live hoping to be noticed don't allow themselves to be invisible to the world so they can be visible to their own soul. And maybe you don't even realize you're seeking this validation. Maybe it's disguised as wanting to help. Maybe it's camouflaged in the excessive effort you put into being good. Maybe it's hidden in the need to explain your emotions to people who've never understood you. Maybe it's embedded in the times you silence your feelings for fear of seeming exaggerated. The invisible wound doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up in small choices, in the way you accept less than you deserve, in the way you tolerate shallow relationships for fear of loneliness, in the way you always blame others for their mistakes as if you're trying to repay an emotional debt that isn't even yours. And it all comes from one place: the unseen child, the unwelcome child, the child who never heard anyone say, "You have the right to feel this, I'm here, I see you." And what that child didn't hear you're trying to get now, from the world, from relationships, from the gazes that surround you. But what no one told you is that the validation you seek deep down won't come from others. It can only come from within, because only you know how much it hurt growing up with that absence. Only you know how much you sacrificed to receive the bare minimum. Only you know how much you tried to be everything to everyone, while no one was everything to you. And when you begin to realize this, you also begin to understand why your healing wasn't celebrated. Because for many, you were always the support, never the protagonist. You were always the one listening, never the one heard. You were always the one reaching out, never the one embraced. And when you change this dynamic, when you stop molding yourself, stop caring, stop saving, many simply walk away because they don't know how to deal with your wholeness. They don't know how to deal with your autonomy. They don't know how to deal with someone who is no longer trying to please. And you feel like you're doing something wrong, but you're not. You're simply living your truth. And this bothers those who only knew how to deal with their wound. Now listen carefully. You no longer need to seek the applause that never came. The child who still cries within you no longer needs to perform on stages that only feed vanity. What it needs is acceptance, a silent embrace from your conscience, a non-judgmental gaze from your adult self, a safe place within your own being. And if on some level this resonates with you, if these words seem to resonate with you, then do something that will seal this moment within your soul. Comment below courageously with a single sentence. I see the child I was, and I embrace what she felt. This is your healing declaration. And maybe for the first time, that child inside you will finally feel seen. You change, and you really do. But to the world, it seems like nothing happened. You evolve from within. You go through your shadows. You abandon old behaviors. You silence internal screams. You forgive those who never asked for forgiveness. But even so, people continue to look at you with the eyes of the past. They continue to expect old reactions, conditioned responses, weaknesses that you have already overcome. They continue to act as if you were still the same person, the one who tolerated, the one who gave in, the one who accepted little and smiled so as not to lose anything. And it hurts. Not because you need validation, but because your heart knows how much this transformation cost. Only you know the price you paid for not being who others expected. Only you know how many times you've gone to the bottom to rebuild yourself without making a sound. Only you know how much you bled in silence trying to understand why, as you became more whole, you also became less recognized. There is a subtle, almost invisible cycle that repeats itself every time you try to show your new truth to the world, and it insists on giving you back your old reflection. It's like being trapped in a foggy mirror. You see yourself differently, but no one else does. And the truth is this: there is a deep pattern behind the non-recognition. A hidden emotional cycle that operates behind the scenes of relationships. A cycle that begins with your change, but ends in the frustration of not being noticed. You change, but the other person doesn't update the image they have of you. And then you try to prove that you've changed. You explain, justify yourself, try to demonstrate with your actions that things are different now. You force dialogue, offer new versions of yourself, try to convince the other person that you are no longer who you used to be. But the other's resistance hurts you. Because deep down, you didn't want to have to explain. You wanted to be recognized in a natural, fluid, loving way. But that rarely happens, because most people don't see who you are, see what you were useful to them, see the role you played, see the emotional role you played in that dynamic. And when you change it, you break that function. You stop feeding the game. It fails to live up to silent expectations. Stop filling other people's needs with your emotional submission. And the other feels betrayed, even if they never said it out loud. It's hard to realize that, but it's liberating to understand that the problem isn't always you. Often, it is the other person who cannot deal with the new version of themselves, because this new version no longer benefits you as much as before. It doesn't comfort him like it used to. It no longer protects you from your own shadows. And that's where you find yourself faced with the dilemma: keep trying to be seen, or keep being true to who you've become, give in to be recognized, or stand your ground even when ignored, fit back in, or stay whole. Rumi said, you have to keep breaking your heart until it opens. And maybe that's what's happening now. Your heart has already broken into 1,000 pieces trying to be loved completely. But little by little, he is opening up to something bigger, for a love that doesn't require proof, for an existence that doesn't beg for attention, for a healing that does not depend on external acceptance. This cycle of non-recognition is not new. It manifests itself from childhood, when you did everything to get the attention of the one you loved, when you behaved the way you thought would please, when you were molding yourself to be accepted, to not be abandoned, to not be rejected. And this child who learned to adapt is now inside an adult body that desperately tries to be seen by those who never learned to look. Only now you are aware. Now you can break this cycle. Now you can realize that every attempt to be recognized by those who insist on reducing you is a new betrayal against yourself. You don't have to prove anything anymore. Your move does not require a certificate. Your silence is enough. Your new look speaks for itself. Your posture, firmer, calmer, more aligned, already reveals everything that needs to be revealed. But the world is slow. The world is afraid of the new. The world likes to keep you where it found you, because it's comfortable, predictable, manipulable. So when you change, the world goes into denial. Pretend you don't see. It provokes you to go back to being the way you were before. He tests you, ignores you, sabotages you emotionally. And if you're not careful, you'll fall into the trap of abandoning yourself once again, to please again, to give in where limits had already been established, to retreat where I had already advanced with courage, of denying your evolution in exchange for superficial belonging. But pay attention. This cycle only ends when you decide to no longer participate in it, when you understand that being invisible to some is the price of being whole with your soul. That being ignored by those who benefited from your wounded version is a sign of healing. That you are no longer recognized by certain environments is proof that you have left them emotionally. And here's the most uncomfortable and liberating truth of all. Not everyone will follow your change. Not everyone will applaud your evolution. Not everyone will like your awakening. Some will lose you because you found yourself, and that is necessary, because you can't take everyone with you where you're going. Not everyone has the courage to walk alongside someone who no longer accepts living half-heartedly. So, if today you feel invisible, misunderstood, emotionally isolated, maybe it's because you're leaving a cycle that no longer serves you. And the emptiness this creates is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It's a sign that you're crossing the bridge between who you were and who you're becoming. A lonely but necessary bridge. A painful but sacred crossing. And if you've come this far, if these words resonated with you, if you felt that the text described exactly what you haven't been able to explain until now, then comment below, with truth, with soul, with courage. I'm not going back to the version I had to abandon. This is your turning point. It is your dividing line between what once was and what is beginning to be. Being seen is not the same as being perceived. This is perhaps one of the hardest and most liberating truths anyone undergoing emotional healing needs to hear. You can be seen all the time, on social media, in beautiful photos, in environments where your presence is recorded, in words you speak that make a momentary impact. But being seen is something else. Being seen is when someone breaks through what is apparent and touches what is subtle. It's when someone isn't content with what you show, but feels what you carry. And few people in the world have this capacity. Even fewer have this willingness. Being noticed is something that can be achieved with effort. You can dress up, stand out, speak well, attract attention, deliver results, please, do everything to appear interesting. And in the end, be noticed, be remembered, be mentioned, be recognized superficially for something you do or represent. But being seen doesn't depend on effort. Being seen is when someone sees who you are even when you're not trying to appear anything. When someone perceives your soul between the lines. When someone hears your silence. When someone feels you in what you haven't said. And most of the relationship pain you carry comes precisely from this confusion. You are noticed by many, but seen by few, or by no one. And that's why, even surrounded by people, you felt alone. That's why, even doing everything right, you carried a void. That's why, even giving of yourself, smiling, delivering your best self, you wondered, why does it still feel like no one sees me? Because what you wanted, and still want, isn't attention, it's presence. It's not response, it's listening. It's not companionship, it's connection. And that's not found anywhere, because most people are too busy with their own noise to hear the subtle melody their soul emits. They're too distracted by their own masks to perceive the raw beauty of their truth. They're too wounded to welcome someone who no longer needs to pretend. You spent a lot of time seeking attention, trying to deserve affection, trying to find in others a reflection of what you still didn't have the courage to admit to yourself. You wanted to be seen by those who never learned to see. You wanted to be validated by those who only understand the language of scarcity. You wanted to be loved by those who only know how to relate to wounds. And when that didn't happen, you felt the fault was yours. But now you're beginning to understand. The problem isn't that you weren't enough. The problem is that you were too much. For someone who only knew how to deal with halves, you were too deep, too sensitive, too whole, too true. And that's scary. It's dislocating. It's disturbing, because it reveals what the other person isn't yet ready to access within themselves. The naked truth is this: most people just want someone to complete them, not someone to reveal them. They want you to fill what's missing, distract what hurts, soothe what screams, but they don't want you to shine your light on the darkness they haven't yet faced. They don't want your authenticity to confront the comfortable lie they live. They don't want your presence to reveal how absent they are from themselves. And then you feel out of place. You feel strange. You feel out of place. But that's because you weren't born for shallow places. You were born for real encounters, for conversations in silence, for hugs that heal, for glances that penetrate, for presences that don't require much to be felt. You were born for spiritual connections, not utilitarian relationships. So every time you try to be seen, you'll be frustrated. But every time you allow yourself to be whole, even without recognition, you'll feel peace. Because when you decide you no longer need applause to exist, something inside you reorganizes. When you stop chasing love, it starts running toward you. When you accept that being invisible in certain environments is the price of your integrity, you stop hurting yourself trying to fit in. You no longer need stages, you need truth, you no longer need followers. You need those who walk with you, side by side, even when everything gets dark. You no longer need to be seen by everyone. You need to be seen by those who know the value of an awakened soul. And it starts with you seeing yourself, with you recognizing your own transformations, with you celebrating your small victories even when no one else notices, with you sustaining yourself emotionally even when others don't. Because this is true liberation, when the most important perspective in your life becomes yours. You no longer need to sell yourself to be accepted. You no longer need to dim your light to avoid disturbing others. You no longer need to sugarcoat your truths to avoid rejection. You didn't come to please. You came to transform. You came to reveal. You came to be you. And most of the time, this will make you invisible to many, but it will make you unforgettable to the few who truly know how to see. Life is wise. It will push away from you all those who only knew how to deal with your limited self. It will close doors where you were merely tolerated. It will sever connections where you were used but never honored. And at the same time, it will begin to bring you closer to people who see beyond, who feel beyond, who touch where it hurts, gently, who recognize your presence without you needing to announce it. These people exist, but they only find you when you stop hiding, when you embrace yourself, when you stop seeking validation and start offering presence, when you decide that living truthfully is worth more than any approval. And if this text spoke to your soul, if at any point you felt that I was describing exactly what you could never put into words, just comment below. I'd rather be whole than noticed. Because this is the phrase that separates those who still live to please from those who have already learned to exist with soul. You spent your life searching for a look that would tell you, I see you. Not with the hurried eyes of everyday life, but with the kind of presence that welcomes even what is hidden. You sought this look in the one who created you, in the one who loved you, in the one who left you. He sought out partners, friends, leaders, strangers. He even looked for likes, quick responses, small signs of presence, even if fleeting, even if superficial. Because deep down, a part of you has always wanted to be recognized not for what you do, but for who you are, for what you feel, for what you carry, for what you sustain in silence. But no one told you, or maybe you didn't listen deeply, that the look you most await will never come from outside. The look that heals is yours. The presence that transforms is the one you offer yourself. The acceptance that is missing in the world is what is still missing within. And that's an uncomfortable truth because you grew up believing that you needed someone to feel complete, someone who saw beyond the surface, someone who would hold your pain gently and say, "Don't worry, I understand." But life, with its sometimes harsh wisdom, showed you something else. It showed that the eyes that hurt the most are the ones that ignore, and the eyes that heal the most are yours. When you finally allow yourself to see what was hidden, see what was silenced, see the parts of yourself that you tried to erase to fit other people's expectations. See the child who cried silently. See the teenager who molded himself to please. Seeing the adult who still tries to compensate for the absence of a love that never came. Seeing the tiredness of having to be strong all the time. Seeing the little deaths you went through without witnesses. Seeing the beauty of having survived all of this, and still loving. You are your own witness. Your soul saw you before any other eye saw you. Rumi whispers this truth in the silence of his solitude, and maybe now you're ready to listen, ready to stop seeking externally what can only be cultivated within, because the key to your freedom is not being seen. It remains to be seen. It's about welcoming yourself. It is about recognizing yourself as someone worthy, not because of earned merit, but because of the essence that you simply are. You no longer need to prove your worth. You no longer need to justify your pain. You no longer need to apologize for being sensitive, for feeling too much, for loving too deeply, for being silent when everyone else is talking, for watching when everyone else is running. You are exactly what you were meant to be. And if someone can't see that, maybe they don't have the right eyes for you. And that's okay, because the most important thing now is that you have. May you look at yourself with the same desire with which you have waited to be looked at your entire life. May you listen to yourself with the same attention you always wanted from others. May you validate your processes with the same compassion you have always sought in relationships. This is the spiritual turning point no one told you about, the one that doesn't come with fireworks or big external revelations. She comes in silence, the moment you, for the first time, feel at home within yourself, the moment you stop running away from yourself, and you realize that there is a sacred temple in your chest waiting to be inhabited. The search you undertook out there, in so many faces and promises, was, in fact, the call of your soul inviting you inside. And you went, even if stumbling, even if it hurts, even though I didn't fully understand the path, but you went. And now, sitting with your truth, perhaps you are ready to understand. It is not the look of another that makes you real. It is the courage to see yourself without masks. It is the delicacy of forgiving without haste. It is the wholeness of accepting oneself even though it is still a process. You don't have to be ready to look at yourself with love. You just have to be willing. Willing to break with the cruel demand to be perfect, to deserve affection. Willing to unlearn everything you were taught about self-image and worth. Willing to allow yourself to feel, without judging yourself for it. Willing to witness your own rebirth. And this rebirth will not come with a party. It will come with silence, with discreet tears, with small internal revolutions that no one will notice, but that you will know happened. There will come nights when you'll lie down and, for the first time, you won't feel broken. Not because everything is resolved, but because you stopped demanding that it be. Because you have accepted yourself as a whole, shadow and light, doubt and faith, pain and power. You are your own cure. And the more you see yourself truthfully, the more life responds with integrity, because what you cultivate inside begins to reflect outside, and you stop seeking approval, stop begging for presence, stop adjusting to be accepted. You become whole, and whoever doesn't know how to see this, and it will simply stop making sense. Now, breathe easy. Feel it in your body, Na'alma, in the silence between one sentence and another. And if at any point, while listening to or reading these words, you felt understood, as if I had accessed a place in you that no one else has accessed, comment below, with truth, with presence, with soul. I am the look my soul has always waited for. Write this to yourself, not by me, but for that part of you that, until today, was waiting for permission to finally exist in peace. She rebuilt herself, not the way the world teaches, in haste, with appearances, with external achievements that disguise internal emptiness. She rebuilt herself in silence, in the early mornings when she cried in secret, and even so, woke up the next day with a thread of faith in her eyes. She rebuilt herself when she understood that no one would come to rescue her, that there would be no someone who who would take her by the hand and say, "There, now you're saved." She was her own salvation. She looked at her wounds with a courage that many people spend their lives avoiding. She touched memories that burned in her chest like embers, and instead of running away, she stayed. During this process, she silenced the need to explain herself. She stopped trying to convince others that she was changing. She stopped justifying her pain, her distance, her new attitude. She understood that true spiritual awakening requires no defense. And then, little by little, she let go. She abandoned the old victim language. She abandoned the role of someone who needs approval. She left the relationships where she was only loved when she was submissive. She even abandoned the expectation that her family would one day understand her new self. But that's when the most unexpected pain arrived, because she thought, and rightly so, that by reborning herself, the world around her would change too. She believed that by healing, the people around her would recognize her efforts, appreciate her courage, and see the beauty of who she was becoming. But that's not what happened. The family still treated her as fragile. Even after everything, even after she bore the weight of a silence that wasn't hers, of holding everyone's emotional structure for so long, of giving up her own pain to tend to wounds that weren't even hers. Even after showing with actions, not words, that she had grown, matured, and crossed a desert no one else wanted to tread, still they saw her through old eyes, through the lens of the past, with that cruel filter of someone who can't recognize strength because they've grown too accustomed to their fragility. And the friends disappeared. They simply stopped looking. They stopped sending messages. They stopped understanding their silences. Perhaps because her silence was no longer a sign of weakness, but of integrity. Maybe because she no longer needed desperate attention to feel loved. Maybe because she no longer participated in the empty conversations, the repeated complaints, the meetings where everyone talked but no one really listened. And she felt for a while that she was being rejected, that his new version wasn't enough, that maybe I had done everything wrong, that perhaps she was not worthy of love in its fullest form. But what she didn't understand right away, and only understood when she delved even deeper into herself, is that this wasn't rejection, it was rebirth. Because rebirth is not pretty, it is not celebrated, it doesn't come with applause or flowers. Rebirth is lonely, it's confusing, it's empty, because being reborn is dying to who you were. And whoever is reborn needs to bury what is no longer useful. And sometimes, what is no longer useful are bonds. They are relationships. These are expectations. These are emotional attachments that kept you stuck to an identity that no longer represents you. She realized that this separation was, in fact, a realignment, that the absence of others was not a punishment, but a blessing in disguise, that the external silence was life's invitation for her to finally hear her own voice. No interference, no noise, without the need to be understood. She understood that many only stood by her side while she carried the weight for two, while she said yes to everything, while she adapted to other people's discomfort to maintain bonds that only existed on the basis of denial. And now that she was saying no firmly, they started saying she had changed too much. Now that she was prioritizing herself, they started calling her selfish. Now that she wouldn't give in, they said she was bitter. But the truth is that she was just more lucid, more whole, more connected with one's own soul. What seemed like rejection was just the echo of the past saying goodbye. It was life with all its wisdom, separating what no longer vibrated at the same frequency. It was real spirituality, the kind that you don't learn from books, but that reveals itself in the daily practice of choosing yourself even when everything around you insists that you return to being who you are no longer. And in the process, she discovered a kind of strength that doesn't come from screaming. It comes from silence, a force that doesn't need to prove anything, that doesn't need to be seen to exist, that does not feed on applause but on coherence. She discovered that there is peace in the void, and that this emptiness, although painful at first, is fertile. It is in this that new bonds are born, links that do not require masks, bonds that respect time, bonds that recognize the value of presence, even when there are no words. She understood that true love is not the one that accepts you when you are broken. It's the one who honors you when you decide to stop breaking yourself to please. It is the one who is not frightened by its light, nor bothered by its silence. It's the one who doesn't want you cured so they can be useful again, but who wants you free. even if that means losing the control they once had over you. And it was in this space of conscious solitude that she flourished, not like a flower displayed in someone else's garden, but like a deep root planted within oneself. And the deeper she dove, the more she discovered that everything she'd been searching for outside, acceptance, respect, validation, true love, had always been there, inside, in the quietest part of the soul, in the most forgotten part. But now, finally it was seen. And if, while listening to or reading this story, you felt as if you were hearing a piece of yourself being narrated, if something inside you recognized itself in this woman, in this journey, in this way of dying and being reborn within yourself, then write in the comments, with soul, with truth, with courage, I am not being rejected, I am being reborn. This is your way of telling yourself that what hurts now is just life repositioning you, and that, as lonely as it may seem, you are not alone. Your soul knows the way. You weren't born to be understood by everyone, and perhaps until today, this has been the greatest burden you've carried without realizing it, the tireless attempt to be understood by those who never learned to listen to the souls of others, the silent need to have your emotions translated, your choices accepted, your silences respected, your pain validated by those who always looked at you from the outside but never had the courage to delve with you into the depths of what you feel. And this is tiring. It drains you. It ties you to bonds where you need to constantly explain yourself, where you feel guilty for evolving, where your expansion becomes a threat, where your emotional freedom is seen as coldness, and your inner clarity is mistaken for arrogance. But here's the spiritual twist your soul has been waiting to hear. You are not the pain. You are the one who survived its silence. You are not the absence. You are the one who built presence even after being ignored. You are not the trauma. You are the one who had the courage to look at it without looking away. You are the one who remained standing, even when there was no ground, who continued to feel, even when it cost you respect, who chose to remain whole, even when you were fragmented inside, who refused to lose tenderness, even after being hurt by the people you claim to love most. And that's exactly why not everyone will understand you. Because what you carry doesn't fit into explanations. It doesn't fit into formulas. It doesn't fit into superficial judgments from those who only live on the surface. You've experienced things that words can't convey. You've traversed places where no one held your hand. You grew in silence. And in that silence, you discovered your deepest truth. But truth, when lived with courage, provokes. It disturbs. It displaces. It forces others to look at themselves. And many people aren't ready for that. That's why they don't understand you. And often, they don't even want to try. They prefer to reduce you to a stereotype. They prefer to lump you in with the complicated, difficult, too intense, too sensitive, too closed off. Because if they truly see you, they'll have to reevaluate themselves. And not everyone has that willingness. Understanding you would require an internal journey they don't yet have the courage to undertake. But you don't need that anymore. You don't need others' approval for your soul to feel at peace. You just need to accept a profound and simple truth. Your journey is unique, sacred, indecipherable to those on the outside. You are made of layers, nuances, and silences that only you understand. And the beauty of this is that you don't need to be understood. You need to be respected. You need to be true. You need to be true to your own legend. Rumi said, "Don't be content with other people's stories. Live your own legend." And perhaps the reason for your pain is this. You're trying to fit your story into someone else's narrative. You're trying to fit into a script that isn't yours. You're trying to follow rules that were made to tame, not to liberate. But your soul didn't come to be tamed. It came to be honored, to be lived, to be expanded to the fullest extent of consciousness, even if no one understands, even if you walk alone for a while, even if they call you strange, lost, distant. You are not distant. You are deep. You are not lost. You are beyond anyone's control. You're not acting strange. You're waking up. And whoever truly sees you will know, will feel, will recognize, because awakened souls recognize themselves in silence, in the way of looking, in the way of respecting each other's time, in the absence of judgment, in the lightness of not wanting to change anyone, in the peace of simply existing alongside, without needing to fill any void. You're experiencing something many haven't even begun to experience, and it isolates you, I know. It makes you doubt yourself sometimes, because the world keeps spinning the same way outside while inside you, everything has been rearranged. You look at the same places and no longer feel like you belong. You hear the same conversations and feel out of place. You try to go back to being who you were, but you don't fit in anymore. You try to explain to someone what you're going through, but you lack the vocabulary. And then you miss something you haven't yet experienced. You miss a depth you haven't yet found in anyone. You feel like disappearing for a few days, not to escape, but to rediscover yourself. This isn't weakness. This is refined sensitivity. It's spiritual maturity. It's an awareness that's cleansing itself of distractions. And so you begin to be bothered by what you once tolerated. You begin to realize that many of the bonds you maintained were based on need, not truth. You begin to understand that the peace you seek in others only exists within. And this changes everything. It changes the way you love. It changes the way you choose. It changes the way you hope. You start to not accept less, not out of arrogance, but because he knows that what his soul offers is profound, and depth is not for everyone. You begin to move away from what pulls you back into unconsciousness. Start saying no to what hurts even when you love. Start listening more to your body, your rhythm, your time. Start living more fully, even if it makes you seem distant. And little by little, he begins to feel that he doesn't need to be understood. He needs to be true. It doesn't need to be interpreted. It needs to be whole. It doesn't have to be popular. It has to be true to your soul. And that's enough. If you've made it this far, if these words touched a place you thought no one else saw, if somehow this whispered truth here made you breathe deeper, comment now, with presence, with firmness, with faith. I don't need to be understood. I just need to be real. Write this for yourself, because this is the phrase that seals your spiritual turning point, the phrase that says, without saying it, that you've come home. Within itself, if you've come this far, it's because your soul brought you, because something inside you not only heard, but felt. And if you felt it, it's because you're ready for the next step. Subscribe to the channel, not only so you don't miss the next videos, but to continue this journey of healing, presence, and rebirth alongside those who also feel with their soul. And if this really touched you, leave a like, not as an automatic gesture, but as a symbol that your soul has been reached. Now, the next video is already on the screen. Watch. Your spiritual journey continues there. And maybe it is there that you will find the answer that is still missing.